this uncertain nature of your career is going to last forever. That's the nature of the creative game. So it's either you figure out how to deal with this thing now, or you go through your whole life like a graph, basically.
At 19, you signed your first book deal.
Yeah.
How do you then manage the expectations of yourself if you were able to have such early success and now there's still so much more of your career ahead of you?
You know, human beings, we like to think, well, we know so much, or we this. It's a lie. We're all sheep. Something is leading you. So it's just, you may not be aware of it, but something is leading you.
Hi, I'm Claud Williams, and this is the Behind the Dreams podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Chibundu Onuzo. Chibundu is a talented singer and award-winning author. Her latest book, Moiwa and the Sea of Words, demonstrates her unique writing style and inspiring perspective. In this episode, Chibundu shares her journey, the challenges she's faced, and how her strong sense of identity and faith have guided her. You have such a strong sense of identity where you seem, in all honesty, unbothered by needing to prove yourself to be anything to anyone. And I'd love to know a little bit more about where that comes from.
I mean, I'm not entirely unbothered, but like I have a mechanism for if bothering starts to arise in me, to squash the bothering and to return to my zen unbothered self. And it's my faith, to be honest. It's who I am in Christ. It's my identity as a child of God. And so it just helps me to put everything in perspective. It helps me to put things that I'm going for in my career, or things that I'm good, just whatever goals, quote and unquote, is that regardless of my external achievements or external failures, I am loved by God deeply. Like there is this deep eternal conversation between myself and God that never stops. It doesn't matter what's happening around me or outside of me. And so I just have access to this deep river, this deep stream. And it's just a conversation that nobody else is privy to. And it's a very good, very enjoyable, there's just a constant dialogue, constant stream. So yeah.
That's really beautiful. And in all honesty, I feel even myself, I've been on a journey with getting a stronger identity in my faith with God, etc. But I know there'll be lots of people, some who are spiritual, some who aren't. But when they hear you say that, they will say, oh, I want some of that for myself, but not know how to get from where they are today to the level of that confidence that you have. How did you actually go about building that relationship?
So when I was in like my mid to late 20s, I went to therapy. I was having difficulty dealing with the very uncertain and unstable nature of having a career as a writer. So like this is not a job. Like sometimes I look at my friends who are wise and decided to go and work a 9 to 5, that at the end of every month, somebody gives you a salary and a check. And I said, no, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to tell my stories. And the thing is, you put yourself up for so much. And there's so much rejection that comes with this game. Till today, I apply for things and it's like, thank you for your application, but no. And so I was finding that if things were going well with my career, I was up. And if things were going badly, or what I termed as badly, my books were not selling as well, or, you know, the contracts weren't coming through in the way I wanted them to come through, then I would be down. And so it would be up and be down and be up and it would be down. And there was one instance where there was something I was really going for, a project that I had worked on for years. And the organization I submitted it to, they turned it down. And like, I was so destabilized. And it was like, okay, no, we really need to go back to the drawing board because this is not sustainable. This uncertain nature of your career is going to last forever. That's the nature of the creative game. So it's either you figure out how to deal with this thing now, or you go through your whole life like a graph, basically. So yeah, I went to therapy. And, you know, we started sort of digging into, my therapist was an amazing woman, she's a Christian. And we just started digging into, but she's also a trained psychotherapist, I should say. So it wasn't like we went there and we were just talking about the Bible. But we started digging into what are your like I am statements that are separate from what you do, like, you know, who are you and all that sort of, all those questions like what do you like doing? And yeah, just who are you? And there's one thing she would say that like, it's not a one-time thing. You don't say, I'm a child of God, wake up and say, I'm a child of God, or God loves me, and then all your self-doubt goes away. She's like, this is something you reinforce, and you reinforce, and you reinforce over and over again, because there's always going to be messages trying to counter what you are reinforcing. There's always going to be the day, and especially because career success is so celebrated in our culture. And so you have to constantly be pushing against that tide that says you are not worth anything if you haven't had this success, or if you haven't bought a house, or if you haven't gotten married by this age, or if you haven't secured the bag. I'm like, what is this bag everybody is securing? What are you doing with this? After you secure it, why are you going to keep this bag on your head? What is this bag? You know, so there's all this messaging constantly. So you have to have your I am statements that push against it and say, no, this is who I am. So yes, you know, one of these, I am loved by God. I am loved. Every morning, I am loved. Oh, I am loved. I am loved. And then also, just things about myself. Like, I'm a curious person. I'm somebody who loves ideas. And that doesn't change if my books do well or they don't do well. I just like a lot of random stuff. I know a lot of random stuff about random stuff. And that's just part of my makeup. So yeah, just sort of getting those I am statements for yourself and constantly reinforcing them. So yes, it looks like I'm unbothered. And at the moment now, I'll say, yeah, I'm by and large unbothered. But then things come up, you know. I have a book that's just come out. And sometimes you have this worry, is it going to do well? Is anybody going to buy it? You know, are people going to like it? And then you go back to the drawing board. I am loved. Whether people like my book or they don't like my book, God loves me.
So what's really interesting is you speak about going to therapy as being something that's helped you on your journey to actually become closer to God and strengthen that side of your identity. For myself, I grew up in a very quite a traditional church type of mentality and that type of culture. And there's always been a bit of that tension between believing in God and going to therapy, because often it will be saying, well, why don't you just pray about it? Why don't you just read the Bible more, things of that nature. Do you see there being a conflict between those two things?
There was no conflict too. For me, I know what you mean, you know, like, oh, why don't you just pray? But then, you know, white people seek counsel. You know, there's safety in counsel. There are so many, and I mean, now we call it therapy, but there are so many relationships in the Bible about sort of older people working with younger people and sharing their wisdom and sort of sharing their perspective. And that's what therapy helped me to do, to sort of get out the jumble in my head. You know, all these, you know, pastors say things like, oh, what you don't reveal, you can't heal. But then also, like, there's like that scripture that says, it says the name of Jesus is higher than any other name. And I often think, well, what if you have not found the name for the thing that is worrying you? And so sometimes you need to go to therapy and say, what is actually the name of this thing that is plaguing me? And so for me, like, I had to name it. Like, what is this problem? And some of it was anxiety arising from the uncertainty of my career. And so I could not name it. I needed to go to therapy to actually name it and say, okay, this thing is anxiety. Before I even know what to pray about, let me know what this problem is called. And so yes, going to therapy just helped me say, okay, this is anxiety. Chibundu, you're not dying, you're just anxious. Okay, so now what does the Bible say about anxiety? Do not be anxious for anything, but with everything, with prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. So yes, the Bible has solutions for our problems, and sort of a lot of the things that I learned in therapy, they are in scripture. But again, you have to sort of take time. There's this one, as my therapist was a Christian, and she would say, taking captive every thought that tries to exalt itself above the knowledge of God in our lives. And it felt like my mind would just be bombarded by thoughts, and I had no control. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And she'd be like, you have to take captive those thoughts. You have to pinpoint them. But if you never sit down to actually go through what is even in my mind, then all these thoughts are just jumbling around. So there was no conflict for me. It was actually very complementary with my faith, actually. I felt very empowered because I'd finally been able to name all of my problems and then tell them, okay, now you all need to bow to the name of Jesus.
That's, in all honesty, really profound. I've never heard anybody say it like that, where therapy is such a useful tool for you to understand a little bit more about yourself or what your struggles are, because until you can identify what your issue is, or your enemy is, or whatever it might be, then actually trying to develop a plan to get past it is so much more difficult or close to impossible. So thank you for that. There's another part of you that is really interesting to me, especially with this idea of your such strong sense of identity. And that is the fact that you are both an author and a singer. How have you been able to navigate, I guess, growing both those parts of your career at the same time?
I mean, I'm still navigating the singing part. I'm very early in my singing journey. So I grew up singing in church and in the choir and all of that. And I've always enjoyed singing. And when I was 16, I took part in a competition called J Factor. The J was for Jesus. The gospel version of the X Factor. Simon Cowell, this is the Jesus Factor. And I took part in this singing competition. It was a national singing competition. And I came second in this competition. And I came relatively close to being signed. So I was scouted by this record label. And I went in with my dad. Their studio was in Ladbroke Grove. My dad at this point lived in Nigeria. He still does, but he just happened to be in the UK. So we went into this record label studio, whatever, together. We don't know anything about the music industry. We're just there. And these people asked me to perform some of my songs, and then, the response was complimentary, and they were like, oh, we want to pre-record, we want to make a demo or something like that. Let's get all your songs recorded, and when can you start coming down to London? I was at school in Winchester at the time. When can you start coming down in London to make all these recordings? And it was exciting, but it was also it felt overwhelming. It felt like I was suddenly over my head, because I sort of entered this competition on a whim. And then I come second. In my family, I'm not even known as the singer. There are singers that are more singering than me. So I've now come second, and then this person is telling me they want to sign me and all of these things. So the opportunity was there, and it was how could you possibly turn it down? So I wanted to do it, but also inside, I did find it quite overwhelming. And my dad is a very spiritual person. So he, just went to this place and was just nodding and looking at all the things these people were saying. And then maybe 2 days later, and we were planning and preparing, okay, I was going to go to the studio for the first session, maybe in 2 weeks' time or something. And then, my dad just sent me a text and said, now is not the time. Now is the time for your A-levels. You're in school, stay in school, music will always be there. Your African parents 101, stay in school. And to be honest, I was disappointed, but then there was also that sense of relief, because it did suddenly feel like I was just stepping on this thing that was, moving faster than anything I'd anticipated. And looking back, I agree with my dad. Now that I'm in my 30s, I agree with him. Even though there were times where I felt oh my gosh, did I miss the train or did I miss the boat? But I agree with my dad, because there were 2 things. First of all, everyone in that recording studio that we went to, for whatever reason, they were all men, and they were all men in their 20s and 30s. And now that we now hear about I don't know anything about those men. I don't know what their intentions were or weren't. But now that we're hearing all these things about the Me Too movement and how people have been taken advantage of in the music industry and all these sort of things, that was definitely not the environment for a 16-year-old, as people say, fresh off the boat from Nigeria. And my parents didn't live here. That wasn't the environment for just like a very green, sheltered 16-year-old coming from Nigeria to sort of go into. And so, yeah, probably I wasn't ready, like, emotionally. So even if, like, my voice was great and people were talking about, like, how, great and how unique my tone was and all of that, I definitely wasn't ready sort of mentally and emotionally. So, yeah, and definitely the music industry is not an industry to go into if you don't know yourself, if you don't have, like, if you don't have your I am statements on lock. Because, people will tell you how to sing, what to wear, what to say, and all of that. And I feel very strongly about this, about creative industries, about how often people want to work with young people because they actually want to mold them. They actually want to make them into something. And yeah, when you're at that age, you're very malleable and vulnerable. So yes, then I was also writing at the same time as I was doing the singing competition and all of that. So I signed my contract at 19 with Faber and Faber, and that was for my first novel, The Spider King's Daughter. And then it just looked like, okay, this writing thing is the one that has taken off. Music was like a passion, and you still sing in church, but that door closed, or your daddy closed that door. I love you, Daddy. I'm not bitter, I promise. I'm not resentful. Daddy closed that door. And so, yeah, writing is taking off. So just do this writing thing. And so, yes, I did the writing thing. And sometimes when I would try to bring in the music into, like, my literary events, so I would be at a literary festival and I'd say to the organizers that I'd want to sing, it was just sort of met with a little bit of confusion. And it's something that happens to a lot of creative people when they try to move into another creative field that is different. In fact, not just another creative field, any other field that is different from the one that they're known in. There can be that, like, stay in your lane energy. You're a writer. You're doing well as a writer. Just continue your writing. I interact with a lot of children. I have a lot of nieces and nephews. And when you see children at that age, they do a lot of creative things. You see, it is not rare for you see a 12-year-old. I play the piano, I play the violin, I'm in chess club, I'm in the literary society, I'm in this, I'm painting. They do a lot of things. But then at some point, somebody says, no, now you have to streamline. Now you have to pick. You have to pick the thing that you want to do. And so often, those pursuits fall by the wayside. So it's not that, I guess the only thing that I would say might be unique about me is that I've just continued doing the creative things that I did in childhood into my adulthood. But that the people have more than one talent and have more than one creative gift. Lots of people have more than one creative gift that they've just stopped doing.
Yeah, I would massively agree with that. And as you were speaking, it was dawning on me that most of us are multifaceted. We're not necessarily, like, we're not animals where this is the one thing that you can do. It's like you can fly and you can swim, etc. But in this world, especially if you are trying to build a career or even just be understood by other people, the simpler we make ourselves, when we develop that brand, then it's easier for other people to understand. Then as a result, it's easier to go forward. So you've really resisted I'm trying to become the brand of this type of author and fit into this box and do this thing alone. But do you feel like there's been any consequences to you trying to still be known for two or multiple different things as a creative?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, consequences. I mean, I don't know. So, like, I mean, consequences. I tell the story all the time of the first time I sang at an event. Someone in the Q&A, asked me why I sang. And I was like, what do you mean, why did I sing? I sang because I wanted to sing. What do you mean? But, like, so yeah, there are those, this is strange. But then it's up to you whether you internalize that or not. It's like, well, it's strange to you. it's not strange to me. I've been singing and writing since I was a child. And I mean, mostly, like, the response is positive. I mean, I sang at an event, and I remember talking to one of the people in the audience afterwards, and they were just like, oh, that, you know, like, where did this come from? They were just so, like, shocked. And I was like, why are you shocked? You know, it's new to you, but I've been doing this all along. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about any consequences.
What's interesting is that in psychology, I can't remember the exact stats, but they'll say something along the lines of, for every one negative thing you hear, you have to hear like 7, 10 more positive things. So even though most people might receive it positively when you're not necessarily what they expected in that regard, how do you not internalize that negativity or that confusion?
Yeah, I mean, again, you go back to, like, you know, go back your I am statement, scripture. I actually believe scripture is, like, transformative. And it's interesting when you see people who are not Christians, like, you know, taking biblical principles, and it's really working for them, you know. Every day they wake up and say, I'm gonna be the best, I'm gonna be this. And, you know, the Bible talks about, you know, this book of the Lord shall not depart from my mouth, I'll meditate on it day and night. You know, like, you know, the word of God is sharper than a two-edged sword. All of this, like, I believe there's, like, creative power in the word of God. And so, like, you know, if you come and you say, it's not that I don't feel discouraged, but then I have in my back pocket, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not that I don't feel like, oh, this thing is not going to work, or like I have all these feelings, but then I have scripture to counter them. You know, I gave a talk recently at the church, and I was talking about how I have the mind of Christ. That's what the Bible says. I have the mind of Christ. So I have the mind that created the universe. I have it. It's like, I've not even done enough with this mind that I have it. I have access to it. It's up to me how much I sort of, you know, use that access or take advantage of that access. But, like, I have it. And so, like, again, it's just rerouting myself in that, like, eternal stream, and just reminding myself, like, this world is real, but there's, like, a realer real. There's a realer real, and I have access to that.
There's earlier on I wanted to stop you when you were speaking, because you said something quite like mic drop type of moment, which is at 19 you signed your first book deal.
Yeah.
And that's a goal which people will be doing. They want to do in their 20s, their 30s, or even up until their 80s or whatever it might be. Like, it's not something that people are always able to accomplish. And that to do it at such a young age is really impressive. But my question to you then becomes, how do you then manage the expectations of yourself if you were able to have such early success and now there's still so much more of your career ahead of you?
I had a lot of support. Like, you know, that me being signed young at 19, I had a lot of family support from my parents, from my siblings. I was told from a very young age that you are a talented writer, you're good at writing, you're gifted. And my sister, our family talent scouts, she bought, my older sister, Dilichi, she bought a book called The Writers and Artists Yearbook. And it was in that book that I found my agent. And she bought it for me when I was like 14. So, like, I don't know what other presents 14-year-olds were getting. I don't know. I said, like, where's my mobile phone? But she bought me The Writers and Artists Yearbook. So there was that belief that, you know, Chibundu is gifted at writing. And that helps. I didn't approach it with, like, self-doubt. I hear a lot of people talk about feeling like, oh, they didn't have permission to be a writer. But my family definitely not just gave me that permission, gave me that you are a good writer. And so that is part of why I was published so young, because I did have all that support. And then about managing career expectations. Sometimes when you are young, you don't really realize what you have done. You know, now I really look back at 19-year-old Chibundu and I marvel. I said, what type of teenager was? And it was me that did it too. And even now, as I'm 33, I'm like, sometimes you think, give me some of that vim and vigor, because I just did it. And like, you don't stop to think, oh wow, you're doing this amazing thing. It's just like, I'm just doing this thing. And then, yes, I got signed at 19, and there was this like, whole sort of, I got a lot of press even when the thing was just announced. And I don't think I had like any vast expectations of myself in the immediate aftermath.
Well, how about now?
How about now? It's so funny. I was like, the other day I was thinking, I don't know what I was doing. I had to go back to talk about myself or something. I can't remember what. And I was thinking, this question you asked, have I lived up to that 19-year-old promise? And then I also thought, this is just a useless question. My friend, focus on the work you're doing now. Who asked you to be a chronicler of Chibundu's potential? That's really not your work. Let others be judging and gauging and this, that. That's not your business. You have books to write. You have, scripts to do. You have stories to tell. You have songs to record. Has Chibundu lived up to her potential? That is not your business right now. So, yeah.
I love it, because I know for myself, I'm very reflective, which is great. Like, it means that there's lots of positive things that come with that. But also it means that sometimes you can get so caught up in thinking rather than doing. And I love that you just, like I said kind of earlier, certain things just don't bother you, or you don't allow it to bother you, I had to say. And as a result, that lets you be prolific with your work and just focus on what needs to be done right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
How can somebody develop more of that? So not even somebody, how can I develop more of that, to be more precise?
So is this thing of taking captive thoughts, like not letting things settle? Because that's what, you go to therapy. Therapy is actually like, it can be mind-boggling. You realize that there are some things, for example, maybe like perceptions you have of your body or perceptions you have about yourself, that you talk and you talk and you talk, and you now realize it was Uncle Tayo that said when I was 10. You will now get to the root and you say, Chai, look at 20 years of dysfunction because of what Uncle Tayo said. Then it settled, and then it took root, and so it's that now that I am wise to the fact at how you want to be crying 20 years later for what somebody said 20 years ago, or you want to make sure that, hey, stop, you're not going further than the surface. We're dealing with this today, so we don't have to deal with this in 10 years time. It's funny, like yesterday, someone said something to me, and I came back home, and like, I said to my husband, like, oh, they said this thing to me, and like, does it mean this or does it mean that? And he was like, okay, did you ask them what it meant? And I was like, no, I didn't ask them. And he said, okay, well, next time somebody says something to you, I don't understand, ask them. End of discussion. Stop mulling over, chewing over. I think it has passed. It has happened. They said it. So it's gone. And it's that sort of like snatching those thoughts before they can settle. What the work you do in therapy is now like when you've now let them settle, then you will now be digging it up, digging on roots. And they talk about how weeds, they have seeds that they've spread and more seeds, and then you'll be putting the weed killer and it's not killed the weeds, and you're over a year still crying over what Uncle Tayo said 10 years ago, and then he made you do this. So sometimes you do have to just go back and undo those things that have settled. But then it's then when you have those tools, you're like, okay, from now today, Igbo people have a proverb. Morning is when you wake up. That's your morning. So it's like, okay, now I've woken up. Nothing is settling again. Oh, it's not set. We're dealing with it. Because therapy is expensive. I'm not in therapy again. So I don't want to go back.
So I'm noticing a bit of a theme in some of the things you're saying, in that a lot of the confidence that you had to be able to be an author at 19 was from what your family did, but then also some of the, I guess, those roots that you had to pull up were through therapy, were also from things that were said or done at potentially a younger stage in your life. So at this point, if somebody is surrounded by young people, whether it's their children, nieces, nephews, or whatever it might be, what advice would you give them on how they can create an environment where they can get to our age and not have to worry about that, but have the confidence to fulfill their dreams at a younger age?
Oh, you have to speak life into like children. Like, your words are so important. Like, I remember the passing comments that people made to me. Like, in a way that even now words don't settle. Those years are so formative. Like, I remember somebody, an adult that I looked up to, saying in passing, this was at the start of my writing career, when, yes, I'd had all this sort of press around me, but I wasn't making much money. And he said to me, oh, this writing thing, you'll never make money from it. And for years, I'll be struggling and having anxiety about money and this, because somebody just said it, and they've gone, no, they have planted something that is now giving you sleepless nights. And they've gone. They're living the rest of their lives happily. And so, yeah, those words that you say around children, they are so important. I remember, and yes, I remember the positive ones. I remember, my mom saying you're a good writer, my dad saying it, my mom taking me to this meeting with older Nigerian writers when I was 10, and me sitting among writers who were published, and I was 10. So of course I'm going to be published at 21, and that's even late because it's 11 years after that. But that's how much was sown into me so young. And so, yeah, those words, like, I don't like when people, when children are around, they say, oh, this one, they're lazy, they're this, they're that. I'm like, no, don't say they're lazy. Say, even if they're showing signs of laziness, you're hardworking, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're kind, all these things. So yeah, words, definitely.
I massively agree, because I'd say probably a lot of who I am today is because of the so many positive things that I said when I was younger. So I was raised by my grandmother primarily. So my parents got her to come over to the UK from Jamaica, which is where they're from. Because when they found out that they were going to have twins, they're like, okay, we can't do this by ourselves, sort of thing. So they flew in support.
Okay.
And I remember she used to just pour so much love and kindness into me all the time, where now at the time as a child I thought that was standards, but as I got into my 20s, my 30s, etc., you begin to see this is not everyone's experience. Not everybody had that support. Not everybody was affirmed in that way. And then you begin to see the unfortunate consequences of those negative things that were planted in them as children. So for people who have experienced that, we've spoken about therapy rather, and we've spoken about having your foundation in your faith. Is there anything else that somebody can do if they've had those negative words or experiences happen in their lives that can help get them back on track today?
Some people believe I can never be good at business. Like, I don't have the business mind, or I don't have the this, or I don't have the that. And as I said, I'm not doing therapy anymore. There are things that now I'm working through in my career that, like, I have believed about myself. And it's like, why? I'm not even trying to think of an example. Like, I'm not good with admin. I'm not good at admin. Anytime I see, like, a spreadsheet or anything, like, my eyes just glaze over. I'm not good with admin. And again, shout out to my husband, as he works a 9 to 5, and he taught me how to use Excel. Because I kept saying, do it for me. He said, no, I'm going to teach you. Do it for me now. No, I'm going to teach you. And he taught me how to use Excel. And I'm not perfect at it, but I cannot believe that me, Chibundu, I can be filling spreadsheet and doing function Y, and you do this one and everything will add up, and you do it like this and everything will multiply. I was like, I believe that, but my brain and Excel can never go together. Those are like limiting things that I believed. And this was not something that I had to go to therapy to unpack. But yes, it's like, I don't even know where I got the idea from. Sometimes you may not be able to pinpoint the exact moment. All I know is that, okay, I don't know where you started, but I know where you're going to end. You're going to end today because this is a lie. I don't know who told you. So like, I may not have the skills to become the best, Excel person, whatever the best Excel person is, but you can use Excel. I'm capable. I can do it. I do. I use it for my tax returns now. I'm there adding up my functions, my lists, and yeah, so many other things like that. So many like limiting things that that we have believed. And I mean, sometimes I think about, even some things like that I still believe now, that something I'm like, is it like comfortable for you to believe that? But I don't know if I want to unbelieve it because I don't like stress. My aunt was saying to me the other day, like, why don't you like, mentor more people who want to be like writers? I'm like, just the thought of it is just making me even want to like shrink up. I'm like, no, don't give me. I don't want to do it. I'm like, it's like, well, in my head, I just think like, no, I can't do it. But maybe I can, Maybe after I leave here now, you're going to see Chibundu's mentoring program for young writers. Unlikely. And I mean, I love like sort of interacting with people and like encouraging them and like, say, yeah, go for it and all of that. But for now, anyway, that's just something I still believe that.
But is that a lie that you believe, or is that just simply that you just don't want to do it?
It's a good point. Exactly. Yes, exactly. I don't know what it is. Definitely, the Excel one was a lie. And then sometimes you just don't want to do things. You're right. And there is also like, just learning that about yourself. But sometimes it feels selfish. And is this something I don't think I've spoken about? Oh, you've asked me a question I've not spoken about in an interview before. Sometimes it feels selfish that you've achieved a lot in a certain field, or by God's grace, you've done things that people look up to in a certain field. And so like, I guess a lot of people's answer to how you should quote and unquote give back is then you must therefore go out and mentor the young writers of the world. And yeah, sometimes you do have that pressure. Sometimes I do have that pressure, or I feel that pressure. But then I can't come and kill myself.
But doesn't this all come down to ultimately what you believe your purpose to be? Because I know there's a pressure, especially for people that are Black and successful, that, I have to go and, like you say, do the specific thing that like society will expect of me. But if that's not necessarily your purpose, then sometimes you might be running in the wrong lane. So I guess, do you know what your purpose is?
I mean, yes, obviously, writing, telling stories. I mean, I don't think about things in like terms of purpose. I always feel all those things, you sort of like, put pressure on people. And I always ask, why are people's purposes always so lofty? Why is your purpose not to clean the toilet today? Your toilet is dirty. Your purpose is... Why are people's purposes so grand? So like, I just feel like life, again, this, Jesus talks about sufficient for the day. The troubles therein, let tomorrow worry about itself. And a lot of times when people are thinking about purpose, they're always thinking about tomorrow, this sort of grand thing. But it's like, what has God called you to do today? And that also sort of helps to ground me as well. Like, what has God called me to do today? Make my bed. Your purpose, wash your clothes. And sort of being kind to the people around me before I start thinking about, sort of this sort of grand purpose thing. But yeah, sometimes it does. I mean, and I'm sure you have it with Dream Nation and all of that. You must get a lot of requests for mentor. Do you? You look like somebody that mentors people.
I do mentor
people. See now, you're doing it. You're the visible Black person mentoring the youth. Oh my gosh.
But to be fair, I have had to start to become a lot more selfish as I've gotten older. So now there's only 2 people that I mentor, whereas before my doors were open or like I would just help as many people as would come to me. But the more I gave, the more I actually had to do the work I'm here to do. And then if I kept on doing that, then before I know it, I'm not going to be the success that they want to be mentored by anymore. So I do believe in, well, the concept I believe in is like this idea of like a cross, in the sense of you should have people above you that you're learning from. You should have people on your level that you're connecting with and learning from. And you should have people that are just like a few steps behind you who you're given to. But you do have to find that balance in terms of, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, what is my purpose for today? Is it to focus on this business? Is it to help somebody? Is it, have I accomplished my own goals that I set for myself? And if the answer is no, then you need to be very mindful of where that time and energy is going.
I like that sort of thing about the cross. I think sometimes it feels like overwhelming. I sometimes ask myself, Chibundu, why are you so easily overwhelmed? Just 10 emails asking you, can you help me? Can you read this? Can you do this? I'm like, oh my gosh. But yes, I feel how I square it is, I can't help every single person that comes across me and wants to be a writer. And because our community, like Black people, Black British people, we have been very underserved when it comes to publishing and the publishing industry. And so there are lots of people who want to gain access to traditional publishing. And they're like, how do I do this? And this, that, and can you put me in touch with this person? And this, that, and the other. And those sort of requests can feel overwhelming. And I mean, it's something that sort of every day, you sort of, when you encounter that sort of thing, you sort of think, how do I deal with this? What I try to do is sort of share information widely about how I got published. So I've made videos on YouTube and all of this, how I found an agent, this, that, and the other. And then for what I can do personally to like actually interact with someone or help someone who wants to become a published writer is, it's like this. There's this thing about the South African people in apartheid when they were on Robben Island. They had a phrase called "each one teach one," and so it's like, okay, I cannot help everybody or mentor everybody or be close to everybody or sort of read everybody's manuscripts that wants to be published and needs an agent and this, that, and the other. And actually, let me put it out there, I don't read unsolicited like manuscripts. Like if someone says, if someone I don't know says, please can you read this for me or this, that, generally the answer is no. And sometimes there are copyright issues in that, just to make sure like to protect yourself further down the line. Someone will say, I sent you a book 5 years ago and now
you copied it.
Exactly. So like I sort of don't stray into those waters. But then it's like I do have a couple of people I've met and sort of know that we discuss writing with, and I tell them more in depth about my journey, and in particular I talk about contracts and money and all these sorts of things. So that's how I'm managing it, Sha.
Okay. How about this then? So another time you and I can talk about if there's a way in which like we can create something that makes it easier for you to support people. So like you said, if they're all coming at you via email, I can imagine that's stressful. But yeah, we might be able to work out a system or an event or a workshop or something like that where you can get that out of the way.
Dream Nation, please, please,
But with that said, we've spoken a lot around your book and you being an author, but we haven't spoken about the book itself. So I don't want to ask you the standard questions, but there's one thing that I'm really curious about when it comes to this. Is there a message in particular that you want your books to get across to people?
Not really. I don't start with a message. Like, I read books for pleasure. Books are like, I watch Netflix and all those things, but books are my original Netflix, YouTube, Disney Plus. And so I definitely read for entertainment. And I want that to be the first thing that people take from my books. Like, wow, this is a good story. Or like, I think there's a time someone tweeted that they missed their stop on the tube because they were reading one of my books. And I was like, yes, mission accomplished. You see people wandering around lost. I can't get home because I was reading Chibundu's book. I'm like, yes, job done. So, yes, I want people to just enjoy the pleasure of reading. And there are certain themes that crop up continually in my books, which one of my friends actually pointed out to me. There's often stuff about family and family dynamics, family relationships. Sometimes there are themes about social responsibility or social justice. And those are things I care about. Yeah.
So for you, it's primarily as long as people are entertained, then that's what matters. The message, all of that, leave that to other people to do with their self-help books and all of that. Is that?
So the thing is, like, I feel like the message is secondary. Like, a novel, for me, is designed to entertain. And so, yes, I feel like your viewpoint will always be woven into your execution of a story. But the novel is primarily to entertain. So, like, if people said, oh, I learned this and this and this from your book, and they didn't enjoy it, it's like, no, this is not healthy eating. This is not like, my novel is not broccoli or like Brussels sprouts. No. That's not what we're going for. So yes, if you learn things, great. But primarily, I do want you to be entertained and enjoy it.
That's a really interesting concept for someone like myself, because I'm always so, this is what I want somebody to pick up. This is what I want somebody to learn. And all of, like, that's my mentality first and foremost. And sometimes it's then easy to forget about, well, if you don't make it digestible, then no one's going to take it on board in the first place. So the fact that you're putting that enjoyment, that entertainment part of it first is really, for me at least, a really useful thing to hear.
Yeah, I think it shows. Like, obviously, with something like Dream Nation, it shows, yes, you do want people to learn something and take things away. That's why you're mentoring the people. That's why you're mentoring the youth. And those like me who are just like, leave me alone. Allow me to enjoy myself. Yeah.
So, in a slightly different direction, you kind of seem like somebody who seems so at peace, so fulfilled. But a lot of us, we always are striving for something new, or we always are trying to do the next thing or whatever it might be. But do you feel that there's something that helps you to get that sense of fulfillment, or at least be able to say to yourself, this is enough? Or is that a misconception that I have of you in the first place?
It's something like I think about a lot. Like, what does contentment mean? And what I've decided contentment means, or what I believe it means, is being able to enjoy where you are now. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't want to advance or progress, but it's being able to enjoy where you are now. Because, like, one thing, like, I learned in therapy was that anxiety is like a future-facing emotion, or it's like, what if this, what if? It's about something that has not happened yet. And so it's contentment is like, you may not be where you want to be, but where you are now, there are good things to enjoy. And again, there's a scripture that says, in all things give thanks. And really and truly, there is always something to be thankful for if you sit down and think about it. Sometimes you do have to think, but again, I'm not sure in the public, but there was a time when I had to be admitted to hospital, and I had to have surgery, and I was so distraught and distressed, and I was crying in the hospital. I was in a ward. I was crying in the hospital, and the woman next to me, I was crying so much that she started comforting me. And so after my crying had subsided a little bit, I said, okay, by the way, what's even wrong with you? And it turned out that she had a rare and aggressive cancer. And like, my tears, they dried up real quick. It's not that I did not have problem, or I had problem, but I was like, this problem that I have, I can see the end. I can see the end. Whereas, she's on this journey that she doesn't know where it's going to end. And it really did bring, it brought that scripture to life for me, that it's true that in all things, there can be something to be thankful for. And I mean, if I hadn't met that woman on the ward, it wouldn't have opened my eyes to that. But there's something to be thankful for now. And yeah, so that's something like that contentment. It doesn't mean that you're where you want to be, but where you are now. And especially if you adopt that thing of gratitude, like a lot of the thing, and it's a cliche, but it's true. A lot of the things you have today, they were things you were praying for 4 years ago. And so if you don't learn how to enjoy it, then the thing you're striving for, you're not going to enjoy it when you get it either. Yeah.
Wow. How did you respond to that lady when she told you that about herself?
When she told me, how did I respond to her? She was really, really nice. I don't want to say like, did I feel like when she told me what her own issue was, because I was really crying. I was making noise on the group word. So, I mean, as I said, my noise is reduced. It stopped. And then we just had like a conversation, and it just helped me to stop looking at myself so much and looking at everything that was wrong with me. It just helped. And I thought, wow, this woman is going through this and she can be comforting me, who is looking at her and thinking, wow. And so, yeah, we just had a chat. And it made time pass quicker. She was an African auntie. She was West African. And, we prayed together, and she like shared her food with me. And like a lot. And when she was older, so I guess she had that sort of, like mature perspective and all of that. And she just kept saying, stop crying. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And it was just very profound that she was the one comforting me. I don't think I was ready to comfort her, but I was, it was a profound experience.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it in so many cases, as well as experiencing it myself, that sometimes the pain that we go through, or even are going through in that moment, it gives us another level of depth and empathy and maturity that we can then pour something else into somebody else who isn't yet at that place, especially people who are a little bit younger or might not have experienced a certain thing yet. And it's always hard to, I guess, process that, even on both sides of it, in terms of, oh, my situation's actually a lot worse, but I need to give you strength right now. Yeah. Or on the same thing that you just said, or, oh no, what they're going through probably is worse than mine, but it doesn't take away the pain that I'm feeling right now as well. Yeah.
I think, that's the thing. It's not that it minimized my pain, but like it put it in perspective. And then it did, in that moment, it made me thankful that, like, okay, it's a health challenge, but there is, there's an end in sight. And the end in sight for me was surgery. It's like, there's an end in sight. And then after you did surgery, and I mean, I'm well, I'm here. Like, you're fine now. And yeah, we kept in touch a little bit after I was discharged. But we're not in touch now.
Did anything change for you after that experience? Like, have you done anything differently, or do you think differently now as a result of it?
No, because human beings are human beings. Human beings. And like, that's the thing, you have to remind yourself, sometimes you'll be fretting about, things that you think, but look at all the things God has brought you through. But that's it. You have to constantly remind yourself, which is why, again, this book of the Lord shall not depart from my mouth. Meditate on it day and night, because you need to meditate on it day and night, because 24 hours will pass and you forget and you remove, because we are really like sheep, and again, these things preachers say all the time, that like, human beings, we like to think, we know so much, or we do that. It's a lie. We're all sheep. Something is leading you. So it's just, you may not be aware of it, but something is leading you. And a lot of times it's our worries, our cares, our goals. They are the things that are leading us and consuming us. And that's sort of like, you have to stop. You have to pause. So yeah, I don't know that it had a lasting effect on me. Like, then after that, I was always grateful, and I was always like, in all things, give thanks. I can see members of my family watching back this interview say, who is this? Always thankful, and then I became a bright sunbeam wherever I went. Sunshine. But yes, it's a journey. Like, again, that constant reinforcement. Yeah.
Once again, you're just proving the point that I said right at the start of this, that you really resist the urge to try and present yourself as anything other than who you are. And I really love that about you.
Thank you.
So a question that we spoke about in one of our previous conversations was asking you around some questions about success. And your response to me was so interesting because you were pretty much just rejected pretty much the concept of success or pursuing it. Where does that come from?
So it comes from, scripture says, vanity upon vanity, all is vanity. You really need to read Ecclesiastes so you get you get life in perspective about how, yes, you work hard and you go for things, but there are all these things about, like, the race is not to the swift, all these things about, yes, I saw somebody that they worked hard. There's one of the scriptures in Ecclesiastes that they worked hard, and then I saw someone, they worked hard and they died, and then all their children were fighting over everything they worked for. And I mean, you see that. You see that. It's like all these things that you're striving so hard for. Part of it, you just remember that this life on earth is finite. And that helps you put in perspective all these things you're struggling to build. And also, being a historian, I know this one for a fact. Most of the work people do, it doesn't survive them. So if you look back just in history, like, let's look at African history, like all those kings, people like Mansa Musa, names, you think, well, where is that wealth today? Like, Mansa Musa was so rich, he had all this gold that he moved around with. And you think, where is that wealth today? And you look at, and I don't know, maybe he had descendants that are still alive, but that level of wealth that he had, that he could literally change, like, the economy around him because of all the gold he was carrying. No, his descendants don't have that today, wherever they are. And so you look at the Elon Musks of this world and all of that. It's like, good for you, all this thing you're building, but you're not the first and you won't be the last. Like, human beings, our lifespan on this planet is finite. And just bear it in mind, so many people that were so famous in their day, the most famous, everybody knew their name, everybody knew. We don't know their names today. We just don't. And that's the nature of human endeavor. So just put this grinding and hustling and securing the bag. All these words that we use, you're grinding. I said, are you a blender? What are you grinding? Human beings, we're not meant to be grinders. What is all this? And this is capitalism. This is spirit of capitalism. We bind you. You want to turn human beings into blenders. Why? I just, no.
So,
are you a blender, Claude?
I am not a blender.
You're not a blender.
No,
okay. Very good. I'm glad.
If with all that said, then do you have a definition of success? It doesn't have to be about money. Then what is it about?
I want money. Look, I'm not a blender, but I want money. Please, whoever is listening, I know Dream Nation, many influential people. I didn't say I don't want money. It's just I don't want to blend to get the money because I'm not a blender. What does success mean? I mean, part of it is I want to create the things I want to create. So I want to write stories, do my music, and why money is important to creatives is that it buys you the time to do what you want to do, because I write full time at the moment, and I don't want to have to work a 9-to-5 job, because then it will take up a lot of my day, and then I won't have as much time to write. And so, yes, money helps me to have time to do what I want to do, which is write stories, create. And then I want to make money from doing the creative things I want to do. Because I also tell people, like, you are spending your life. It's something that I remember when I was in uni, and I remember this, one of my friends, saying to me that they wanted to go into finance, and they were gonna work. They're gonna blend, and grind. And then when they were 35, they were then going to retire. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting approach to take. But then you also have spent 15 years of your life, your youth, a lot of your strength, not all your youth, but a large portion of your youth, doing something that you don't particularly want to do. And these are 15 years that, like, you're never going to get back. And so, like, I'm just aware of that, you know, life is finite. And so I want to spend as much time as possible, you know, making the things and creating the things that I want to create. And I know that you need money to do that. You do, you know, you have to pay your bills and have a house and feed yourself and all of that. But for me, it's not to miss the goal. And like, the goal is to have the space to create the things I want to create. So it just, again, helps me focus. And sometimes, like, an opportunity will come along and there is money attached to it, but then it's not something I want to do. And so it's like, no, the goal is to find the things you want to do and make money from those things. Not be doing random things just to make money. So yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt, money is it's an amazing servant, but a terrible master.
Yeah.
And yeah, when we switch that relationship and we then become the servants to it, that's when everything goes out the window. But if we can use it as a tool to create the lives that we want for ourselves, so in your case, buy you that time and that space to write your books, to sing, and your other creative endeavors, then that's when it's actually useful.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation today. But to bring us towards the end of the interview, there's something that I've heard you speak about on other podcasts and other places that you've shared this topic about, and it's this concept of eternal fulfillment. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I think what you're referring to is when I talked about how there are longings in us, I believe, as human beings, that can only be fulfilled by the eternal nature of God. And a lot of times we think that longing can be fulfilled by career success or external validation or marriage or whatever it is. So which is why we chase those things so desperately, actually, because we think this longing I have is going to be satisfied when I have something like a book deal or when I get $1 million or whatever it is. And what I found in my career when I got my book deal at 19 was that it felt anticlimactic, because I had thought this is the thing that's gonna give all my life meaning and this, that, and the other. And a book deal can never satisfy such a longing. And I mean, you hear of people that are very rich and very famous and all the time, and all the Oprahs of the world, they talk about it like, you know, after you make your first million and you make your first 10 million or whatever it is, you're like, there's still something, that craving for satisfaction and peace and all those things, that those things they can't give. And because, not just because I'm a Christian, but also because I have experienced this, that God is the only person that can fulfill that longing. And the scripture I talked about in that interview was about how he has placed eternity in the heart of man. And that eternity can only be filled by something eternal like God. And so we try and feel that longing with career success, with all the things we're striving for. And hence why Solomon concluded, vanity upon vanity, all is vanity. Because that's the point in Ecclesiastes, that I did it. I got all the money. I got all the wives. I got all the palaces and the riches and this, that, and the other. And so you don't waste your life striving after all those things. Let me tell you now, because I've gotten them. Let me tell you that if you get those things and you don't have that eternal side of you sorted, it's going to be vanity. But see, the beauty of human beings is we don't listen. We don't listen. So still, you will see people chasing all these things their whole life, and they still get to the same conclusion that Solomon got to, that it's all vanity because of that thing in us that can only be satisfied by an eternal God. And we are so much more than this temporal world because we are spirit as well, and the spirit part of us is eternal, which is why the spirit part of us cannot be satisfied by book deals and money and success, because our spirit is wiser and knows that those things they cannot satisfy. They can satisfy your flesh, your wants, your soul, your mind, but that eternal part of us, it can't be satisfied by a lot of what we chase. So listeners, listen to me. And as you go about your day, yes, career success, all those things they're good, but they're not the thing. They're not the deepest thing that can satisfy.
Thank you. That was a powerful and beautiful note to end on. And in all honesty, this has been both a fun but also so honest and authentic interview, and that's just who you are through and through. And I think our audience is really going to benefit from it.
Thank you, Claude.
Before we go, I do have a final question that I do ask all my guests, which is, who do you think we should have on this podcast in the future and why?
So always for me, it's Michelle Obama. Hello. That's such a cliche of a black woman. Why? But I just love Michelle Obama. I read her book, Becoming, and it's her autobiography. And it was just so inspiring to me about how this sort of young black girl growing up fairly deprived, but not realizing that she was deprived because she has such a loving family. And it's again about questioning what is wealth, because she went out into the world as confident and as strong internally as anybody who'd been raised in the most rich environments, because she had that sort of grounding at home. And she's gone on to live, just a life that she's traveled so far from her origins, but then also still has that sense of self that she got from her origins, which is why she can talk about her background and her upbringing with pride. So, yes, Michelle Obama. I am a cliche and I know it.
That's all good. If you happen to have a email, phone number that I can use to reach out to her.
If you have it, please give me.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh.
Great.
Great.
Really good.
I'm glad. This is fun.